Welcome, welcome. So today what we're going to do is continue along with the Green Dragon Tapestry Crochet project. I was able to finish row 1 on camera, and then I did 2, 3, and 4. At this time, I'm on row 5, which is what we're going to begin with today. The plan is just to show you to go through an entire row, just show how long it takes me. Hopefully I won't be talking too much through it, and you can get a sense of how much time it takes. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you that. This is how I print off my patterns. I do everything with written. Um, the patterns also can work if you do want to use a screen. Stitch Fiddle also offers both a chart and a colored block. So instead of spelling out 9 light green, it would be like a rectangle of a light green color with the number 9 in it. Saves a little paper. I don't know how well it translates if you print it, but definitely if you're using like an iPad or something, what I've heard is those work better. So just wanted to show you kind of where we're at, what I do, and we'll go to the next step. We're gonna go ahead and move this off real quick. All right. Okay. So I have the 3mm hook ready to go. This is the first 4 rows that I have on the particular project, just to kind of show you what these look like. Again, I'm working top right corner down to bottom right corner. Right now, we're just starting the project, so we're getting into those yellows that are on the edge. You can kind of see kind of the middle part where we have a bunch of those really light colors and highlights. And then towards the bottom is where you get the black and the teal coming in. And it ends in that neon green. Okay. Whoops. Get this situated. All right. Here we go. So I do have the 6 strands of yarn. And we will hide that real quick so you can see what I'm doing. Lining them up. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but consistent. Pull about 4 inches and we'll get started. So we're going to find the first stitch. Just be careful that we're not missing it. You always can compare. So the last row had 7 light green, so just make sure you're going into that first one. Otherwise, everything will be off by 1, and it's a pain in the butt to actually have to frog and go back. All right, so even those up. So row 5 starts with 9 of the light green, which is this color. So I'm going to grab that color and just pull it through to lock it in. And we'll go ahead, and then that first stitch, again, make sure we don't miss it. We're going to go with the back loop only and begin. 9. This process, just you want to be efficient, consistent. It's not going to be about speed. If you try to do speed, to be honest, it's going to just become a tangled mess. I can see there was a row I'll show you here at the end of the video where it looks like I miscarrying a stitch, and I'll show you what that looks like. And most likely I probably won't fix it, but it will be there. And of course, in these beginning rows, it absolutely bugs me. But again, keep up the momentum, and everything is good. So the next color is we're going to do 19 of the yellow. And what you saw me there do is to avoid the twisting. Everything goes over the hook, but I just pulled the other color and I wrapped that over to hide the twist. I'm just hiding the twist. Nothing special. You can untangle as you go, whatever you feel comfortable with. Sometimes, speed wise, we just tuck things away under the stitch itself. So that's all I'm doing there. And if you do start off with tapestry crochet, doing geometric pieces where you can kind of, let's say it's the shapes of the color changes are all in a square, triangles, a little bit more geometric and not necessarily from a photo. Might be easier just so you can see, like you can visualize where to stop. It'll the counting of the numbers will be very what's the word? I don't want to say easy, but it would be noticeable. You don't have to sit there and concentrate and count and do all that as much in those pieces. So if you're struggling trying to concentrate on tension, concentrate on color changes and learning the process, and more geometric shape piece with just kind of the consistent squares, make sure everything lines up, might be a better choice to start with. But definitely don't let it stop you from challenging yourself. So I want to do 19. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16. Just so we don't want to mess up on the first one. Nope, 19. Awesome. And then we're going to do 2 of the light green. Swap that over. Then we go to the neon. We're going to do 7. And as far as yarn choice, I use a medium weight yarn. I love this yarn brand. It slides off the hook very easy, and it doesn't split too bad. Obviously, the smaller the hook you use, the more it's possibly going to split. But I definitely, um, you know, acrylic yarn works good just because of cost. There's a lot of yarn in these pieces. They can be upwards of 12, 14 skeins. So if you do go way out there on price, it's going to cost obviously a lot more. Um, it's perfectly suitable for a blanket. It's heavy enough. You don't have holes, things like that. You just want to make sure, obviously, the yarn that you're using is easy. You don't want to be probably not doing the fuzzy yarns. I'm not going to hold you back from it. But if you do have a very fuzzy yarn, a lot of the carrying of the colors is probably not going to work because they're going to be poking through everywhere. In that being said, there might be an interesting effect. So don't let it me hold you back at least trying, but it would be a caution if you do want really clean lines and using something like that. So these next couple stitches is going to be single color. So we're going to do 1 green, 1 of the neon, and then back to 3 green. So I'm going to grab 1, and I just am extra lenient on how much tension I give it, so that way it doesn't get super lost. For example, I'm just going to show you what happens if it is too tight on these singles, what it can look like. If I just tighten it a little bit too much, and then do 3 green. For the most part, you can just see they get dips. You can see how tight that is, and it's easy to do. And obviously it also gets slanted. You don't have the nice rectangle going across. So that's why I always say, especially on these one color changes, really be loose with that tension. I hate saying that word because it's like, yeah, if there's too much or too less attention, you're gonna run into problems. But just be extra length right here on this second bar. Give it a tug before changing. You'll be good to go. Keep the twist from coming. We're gonna be extra and then 3 of the green like that. And so it keeps that nice rectangle in there is all. We're going to do 6 neon. 2 of the light, and I call light the light green. This is a tin yellow. And those first rows are always hard because you just don't have a whole lot to hold onto. So on my left hand, I usually kind of hold the piece, and obviously it gets a lot easier once there's something there to grab. And it's just to kind of have something to hold on to and let the hook kind of do the work that way. I'm going to do 10, 3, 6, 8. And so I'm going to go to 1 neon. Extra with it, and then we're going to do 7 of the green. And then 7 of the teal. It looks very blue here, but the skein up close is a very teal color. And some of the other most common questions I get is why back loop only? So the reason for back loop only is it actually it squares off the stitch, definitely. So if you look at these, they're very vertical. Each pixel, if you will, each stitch equals a pixel. So on the computer, they're very squared off-ish. If you do both loops, it'll condense the row, and carrying those colors will make it very dense. And so it's not going to be as comfortable as a blanket. It's going to feel very stiff, and you're actually probably going to have a lot more problems hiding the colors. Um, just because it'll also kind of make that V shape, and with your tension sometimes that V shape gets slanted, and so the piece gets slanted. For example, on the back, you can definitely see where the colors poke through a lot more, and that's in a way the back loop only pushes the stitch forward, so you can kind of push the carried colors to the back here. And so where they're going to show, like here's an example where I skipped some stuff, is going to be on the back. So it just and it's very flexible. I can twist it. It almost acts like a scarf. If you, like I said, I've carried colors and did the both loops, and it just gets super stiff. So that's the reason I use back loop only. It just tends to work for what I do on these pieces. One more. So that's going to be 7 of the teal. And then I'm going to do 2 of the green, 1 neon, 1 light. And then we're going to do 18 yellow. So also with the way I do it, obviously I am doing each row the same direction, right to left. I do that out of consistency. It's not that you can't turn the piece and work front loop only on the back and go along that way. That'll work perfectly fine. Um, the You're gonna have to be a lot more on top of untangling the yarn, if you were to do it that way as well, because cutting the yarn at the end of the row gives you an opportunity to untangle it per row, and it'll inevitably have some knots in it. So if you do have a way and patience to untangle as you go, it's perfectly welcome. The each other row will look slightly different. It won't have that uniform stitch, but it'll definitely work. As far as the picture will be there. Um, and again, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. This is just the way I do it. So let me do 18, 18. Awesome. We'll do 5 light. And as far as kind of choosing the color palette, choosing even what photo you want to do, um, definitely you'll see in all my pieces there the subject of what I am, making is going to be pretty much all there is. So it's going to be a very close up of their face, very, it's going to cover wall to wall. There's really going to be very little, if any, background on these pieces, if I can help it, or if there is a background, I'll go to Photoshop and take it out. And that is just because I want to focus on having the least amount of colors. I don't want to have a piece that has 18 colors, just because carrying that many colors is going to be just a mess. You're going to have to buy so much yarn. It's going to be so thick, difficult to use. And it's just probably there's going to be a number eventually where you can't hide it anymore. So I found 6 to be a good, reasonable number of colors to get the detail that I want, without basically compromising the quality of the work. I have gone up to 8 before. Um, it gets messy, but I can still function with it. Again, it's just a substantial, if I have to buy in each color, I'm going to inevitably have to buy 2 to 3 skeins. So the more colors you have, you're carrying each color through the row, that's going to just be more yarn. So try to find a and some photos just don't work. It's the detail, if it's depending on, you can play with it a lot and it just doesn't come out the way you want it. So it usually takes a very focused piece, and then when it comes to choosing the colors, that's always, that's kind of the fun part, if you will. You want to um, basically have kind of a choose the darkest that you can go and the lightest you can go, and then the 4 in the middle is going to be your color palette. So you're going to choose a black and a white for the darkest and the lightest, and then your color palette is going to be the middle 4 colors, and that's going to be where you saw where I had like a blue, a red, a green, you know, and um, sometimes you can be a little, if you don't want to do black, you could do a very dark navy, you could do a, forest green, something like that. Perfectly fine. My lightest color is yellow in this picture, but you do want to have a very light color for those highlights. Um, and obviously, not having a background in that case helps, because you can basically focus all of your colors onto the piece, without having to worry about adding additional colors, to differentiate the background. If you do have a background and they're all the same colors, it can be hard to differentiate, what is the focus matter when you limit the number of colors that you can have in the piece. I just wanted 9. There we go. Highlight where I'm at in my 3 green. And the purpose of this is just to kind of talk through the most common questions I get, as well as just show kind of how fast I move. Obviously, I'm talking in here. If I do have a book or like an audio book or a show that I'm watching, there is a lot of counting. It's a little difficult if you have a very complex TV show. to try to concentrate on this and do both. Um, Again, if you're interested, I do have like more geometric patterns, kind of the heart where, the counting is a little bit you can kind of get away with not counting because you can see visually where the lines should meet up as you go. If you don't like counting at all, those are the pieces I would recommend. I don't see on a picture like this where you could get away with not counting. It's just going to be too complex, row by row. I want to do 7 of the yellow. I'm going to do a light green, 2 green, and then the teal. I'm going to do 10. And I also have done some pieces where obviously this one is 6 solid colors. I've done some pieces where I've done at least one with a variegated yarn. Um, so like I had one that was a woman's face. There was a lot of light pastel colors, and so when basically I had a cream and I had a pink, and so instead of doing a middle ground with a peach, I did a variegated one. So it would actually help kind of make it look a lot more complicated than it was because it made the variegated yarn look like it was a blend between those two. Just ideas. I always enjoy kind of finding, obviously I'd use the same brand that way the dye lots and they have a couple variegated with some of these greens, they might put a brown in it. Things like that just adds and you don't want it like the absolute bulk of the piece, but if you have something like this green right here where it lines another color, that would be an ideal color to use a variegated yarn. Um, Something that would fluctuate between a blue and this really light green and make it variegated, make it a little bit more complicated and interesting to look at, just as ideas of what I've done in the past. Let me keep going. So I did 2 green, I want 10, 3, 6, 9. Went way too far on that. Back that out. I want to grab both loops like that. All right. What I get for talking through this. We're going to do one neon, one light. And then I'm going to do 35 yellow. And if you do use a written pattern, um, what I recommend as far as naming the colors, try to make sure each color starts with a different letter. Um, if you have a green and a gray and it's late at night and you're not paying attention, it can be easy to mess those two up. So I might say a dark green, so I see the DK or the DARK in front, and that would be my indicator it's a green and not the gray, something like that. Just be really cognizant what you name the colors. That way you're not sitting there and using a bunch of thinking, brain time to just differentiate between your colors. You can, if the actual color of the yarn is very helpful, just use that. I try to make my patterns a little bit more generic so it can handle more than one brand that I use, but sometimes it's inevitable that their naming convention is just easier to use, and you'll see me use that. Like Spa is their kind of real light. It's a blue green that's very light, almost gray tone too. to it, and spa just is the best name for it that I could find. Let's see. I'm just trying to make sure I have some yarn from the bag. See how close I am on this. I needed 35, so 3, 9, 12, 15, 18, 4, 27, 30, 32, 33, 34, and 35. And then I'm going to do 3 of the neon and then back to the yellow. Back to the yellow. We're going to do 14. Okay, so we're going to do 1 light, 1 green. 1 teal. And then 2 black. And so if you do have a piece where, let's say, the first 10, 20, 30 rows don't involve one of the colors, um, the question of whether you should carry all the colors comes up. And all I can say is theoretically you would want to keep the height of the stitch consistent throughout the entire piece. So if you do have a major fluctuation where, let's say, the first couple rows are only use 1 color or 2 colors, I still recommend carrying at least 2 or 2 of them to keep the height. Otherwise, you're gonna have like a skinny little row and then a tall one, things like that. Um, if it's just 1 color that's not used, the difference between carrying 5 colors and carrying 4 colors isn't that noticeable, so you can get away with it. But theoretically, the answer is yes, you'll want to carry all colors through each row, whether or not they're used, just so the height of the stitch is consistent. Um, but like I said, if it's just the case where you're missing 1 color for a couple rows and you're carrying 4 instead of 5 colors, honestly, you could get away with it, and it's not going to ruin anything in that sense. So keep going. We're going to do a neon and then 6 yellow, 1 light green, 1 neon, 1 green, 2 teal, black yarn's always funny. Make sure you're going in the right one. And then we're going to do 33 of the black. And if you absolutely hate black yarn, totally get it. There's usually a kind of a charcoal or a graphite one. You could use a very dark brown, a very dark blue. I like having the black. It just has such an accent in the final piece that it boldens the other colors, but it can be a pain in the butt to work with, especially if you're sitting here staring and trying to find each and one of these back loops. I I am I have a lot of muscle memory from doing these pieces, so yes, it's easy, from looking at how I'm doing it, but I will never tell you that it's not hard to see. Three, 7, 30, and then we're going to do 28 of the teal. So real quick, before we do the teal, you can see this little pop of green right here. What happened was I was crocheting along and I missed carrying that green. So when I went in like here, instead of like crocheting over, it kind of popped out on me. So I carried only 4 and it looked like that. And so when I went in and carried into the next one, you can see it pops out. So didn't see it when I did it. I was crocheting kind of late last night. It happens. We'll just call it an extra scale. I'm not gonna, frog 2 different rows to fix it. So is what it is. I don't. I never really go back if I do have 1 or 2 of those to fix. I guess if you had a very similar colored Sharpie, like if it's in the black. So honestly, I could probably get a fabric marker or a Sharpie in black and just literally color that in to make it less noticeable if it bugged me that much. Just thinking out loud. Obviously, you don't want a bunch of marker on a blanket if you're going to be washing, but things to keep in mind. If it's going to be on the wall, it might be worth it. Okay, I'll try to count this a little better. 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. All right, so that's 28. We're going to go back to the black. Do 5. And you can see once you get towards the end, you're going to struggle a little bit with the knots if they've ever come up, which I am starting to. All right. We're going to do 4 teal. heel. Grab some yarn so I have it ready to go. We're going to do 6 green. $18 of the neon. We're almost there. This is when it's how much you're bugged by knots. Sometimes you just have to get through the end of the row, and then you can just cut it and be done. Alright, so close, so close. That should be 3, 6. And we're going to finalize with 2 of the light. Awesome. Alright, so you can see, yes, there's a knot. It's not atrocious. Looks a lot worse than it is. It's more just twists. So what we'll do with the scissors is we're just going to lay out about where we need to cut. Cut those. Cut the working one a little bit shorter. That way when you pull it through, it's even with the others. Obviously, I have to work on my consistency. Alright, so now we're done with row 5. You can see a little bit of what we worked on. So we will pull that back up. So you can see kind of at the end here, we're in that dark black region, and we come up and we have some of those very yellow scales, very light, all the way, and then we have kind of that top corner that way. Awesome. So first 5 rows, looks like about 40 minutes to do 330 stitches across. Not horrible. Obviously, I was talking a lot, so that's about as fast as I can do it while talking. I might get it down to 35, 32 minutes, something like that per row. Um, so, 6 rows, about 3 hours a night. We could nail this out in about 3 weeks. End of month will be the goal. And I'll keep you updated with some more videos. Let me know your questions and we'll go from there. Thank you.